Good evening and welcome to the virtual board meeting of the Board of School Directors of the School District of Springfield Township. This is our last virtual board meeting for hopefully forever, but we're hoping that it's our last. And I would like to welcome you this evening. Could we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. A reading of the mission statement. The mission of the School District of Springfield Township is to educate and develop all students as learners and citizens who are high achieving, resilient, and responsible in a changing global community. Roll call, Ms. Michaels.
Mr. Bedard.
Here.
Mr. DeFranco.
Here.
Dr. Etlin. Ms. Jordan. Mr. Lapidus.
Here.
Mr. Needleman.
Here.
Ms. Sarsfield.
Here.
Ms. Lipinski.
Here.
Dr. Taratusky.
Here. At this time, we will take some public comments on agenda items. And if you wish to speak, you can use the hand raise feature. Do we have the link? Thank you very much. The link to tonight's agenda is in the chat. If you'd like to take a minute to look at that. And then if you have any questions, or rather our comments regarding any agenda items, please raise your hand.
Seeing no hands in the participant and attendee column.
Okay, thanks. I apologize for my dog who would like to have a lot to say at the board meeting tonight. All right. And before we get into everything, I would like to take a few minutes to recognize that this is National Teachers Appreciation Day and the week that we are honoring our teachers. I want to express my gratitude to all of our staff, our teachers, aides, support staff, food service, bus drivers, maintenance, and administrators, volunteers, and anyone that I've left out. Your efforts toward keeping our schools open in all the various iterations this year has been incredible. We've been through an unimaginable year. We've learned a lot, we've grown a lot, and our students have grown too. And so you are the reason for that. And we thank you for all the work that you have done on behalf of our students. So at this time, we will have reports of committees. Finance Committee report, Mr. DeFranco.
Thank you, Dr. Taratusky. There was a Finance Committee report on April 22nd at 8 a.m. In attendance was Dr. Yannicone, Ms. Michaels, Ms. Braun, Mr. Bray, Dr. Etlin, Mr. Lapidus, and Mr. Bedard. And if I've missed anybody, I apologize. That's what my notes say. Ms. Michaels brought up the potential of a review for policy 611, which I believe we'll revisit at a later date. We discussed vehicle purchases, the need for buses. 3 of them are on the agenda this evening. During the bus discussion, one of the board members revisited the question of outsourcing busing in the future. We had a brief conversation about that. There was a review and analysis from 3 years ago that is going to be updated, and we'll bring it back up at our next finance meeting just to see where that needs to go going forward. And I believe there was also discussion of a new plumber's truck. I don't see that on the budget tonight, and I think that's because it's already built into the facilities budget and didn't need to be voted on. So I'm not sure if that's 100% accurate. We also reviewed the budget presentation, which was on the board agenda for tonight. There was a discussion of various views from the board members at the finance meeting as to whether or not the tax increase should be 2%, or up to about 2.5%. The current Act 1 index for this year is as high as 3%. So we will get into that later during the budget discussion this evening. And looks like that is all I have.
Thanks, Mr. DeFranco. Appreciate that.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Academic Affairs Committee was held last evening, and Ms. Sarsfield, I believe that you're going to provide the summary of that meeting. Thanks.
I am. Thank you, Director Taratusky. So the Academic Affairs Committee did indeed meet yesterday virtually. We met at 5 o'clock, and the committee members that were there were Ms. Jordan, myself, Ms. Lipinski, and then Dr. Yannicone, Dr. Johnson, and there were others that were also there in attendance. And I may not have everybody because it was quite a large group, but I know Dr. Van Boren was there, Dr. Rittenhouse, Mr. Fuller, Mr. Cody, Mr. McCaslin, and Mr. Oliver were in attendance. So I apologize. I know I didn't get everybody, but I know that at least I tried to capture a little bit of who was there. And of course, Dr. Taratusky was there as well. We did, so Dr. Johnson chaired the meeting, and she went over quite a bit of information. So hope everyone is comfortable. We went over state testing. So a lot of state testing didn't occur last year with the PSSAs and the Keystones, but they are occurring this year, much to the chagrin of some of our students and parents, but they are indeed happening. The PSSA testing is happening May 17th through 28th. The Keystones at the high school are happening the May 17th, also through the 28th. The Algebra Keystone is happening at the middle school, June 1st through 3rd. And they completed the PASA testing as well. A lot of what Academic Affairs does is we review curriculum. So over the past, number of years, I want to say 5 or so years, they're probably longer than that, actually. We've been doing a curriculum review and updates. So they've been going through different cycles of reviewing curriculum. And in this, this meeting, we looked at the K-5 social emotional learning curriculum review. And we actually received a grant for the purchase of Second Step, which is a K-5 program to teach and design instruction in social emotional skills. So that was implemented and is being evaluated this year with teacher and student input. We also discussed the social studies curriculum at grade 5. They're continuing to work and outlining the essential questions and the understandings for the grade level and introduction to US history and civics. So they're going to be writing curriculum through the summer and plan to review and select a resource in August, this coming August. Social studies, grades 9 and 10. There's been a realignment of the course sequence beginning of this past year for US history for grades 9 and 10. And the team continues to review resources and hopes to make a recommendation on a selection, hopefully in the fall. And visual arts and languages, they're just beginning this work now with the process of exploring a shared vision for the department and designing our work in order to meet goals of those departments. And they'll work through this through the summer and try to come up with essential questions, improving resource selections. Obviously there's the review process, and which is a lot of work for the department heads, and then they come up with resources. So we're really excited to be able to recommend the social studies, middle school social studies. They did a really thorough review since last spring, working to articulate the course sequence and looking at really some big issues with social studies at the middle school level. And they have come up with Cengage World History. It's going to cover the great civilizations. They really worked to incorporate universal design and really having a curriculum that represents all students. So we're really excited to be able to recommend that. They also looked at mathematics, and mathematics predominantly for algebra, geometry, and algebra 2. And that's going to be a new curriculum, which is Envision AGA. So what that does is that is a bridge from the earlier K through 8 program that uses Envision, and so continues that program, which is a really nice bridge. And then we also are recommending a pre-calculus book, which will dovetail nicely with the calculus book that they are currently using. So those are two of the social studies and the mathematics. And then we talked about instructional technology. Rich Oliver went through a bit about the smartboard replacement planning, that the smart boards that exist now are, really old school, and that we're trying to bring up the technology so that it supports, just better learning. And then Dr. Van Voren went over the summer programming for ESY and for COVID compensatory services update also, so that there'll be some sort of working to bring up students who have really lagged behind and who have IEPs that will be able to provide services for them starting in the summer. And then we also talked briefly about the Spartan Academies, looking forward to actually bringing our own staff in to help, provide that continuity and really lifting up our students who have kind of fallen behind. And then we talked about kindergarten registration. The kindergarten registration continues to be ongoing. It's a little lower than in past years, likely due to COVID. So, if you know any kindergartners that are out there that are looking to potentially sign up, please sign up. Also, we talked about the Coffee and Conversation a series that continues to be offered at the district level. There just was a session that was family validation. It was a virtual webinar for middle school and high school parents that was held last week, and there were more than 100 people registered. So that was it's great to be able to provide these social services really for all of us parents that do need those supports and students who need those supports, especially during these times. So that was our meeting.
Thanks so much, Ms. Sarsfield. It really was a good meeting. There was a lot of information shared, and I want to thank Dr. Johnston and all the staff that participated in preparing the information about the new curricula that are on the agenda tonight. So thank you so much. All right, we will have our administrative report. Dr. Yannicone.
Thank you, Dr. Tarotowski. I'm going to begin with some information about today's announcement from the governor's office. Today, the Pennsylvania Department of Education notified all school districts that Governor Wolf has lifted most COVID-19 mitigation orders effective May 31st. It's our understanding that the Montgomery County Office of Public Health will support the changes and recommend that school districts make the best decisions for our own communities. The lifting of the order essentially removes the requirement for social distancing and limiting capacity indoors or outdoors in schools and businesses at the end of the month. It does not eliminate the mask order, however. That order will not be lifted until Pennsylvania has reached 70% for vaccinations of those 18 and older. We are currently at about 42% fully vaccinated and 63% partially vaccinated in the state of Pennsylvania. So it is possible that we may reach the threshold prior to the end of the school year. However, given that we are not at that threshold at this time, the universal masking order remains in effect. The Montgomery County and Pennsylvania Departments of Health health codes are also continuing to be in effect, and COVID-19 is listed as a communicable disease. Thus, the Office of Public Health in Montgomery County is still requesting and recommending that school districts submit a mitigation plan for any large group gathering. We are still required to contact trace and quarantine upon identification of any case of COVID-19 in our schools. I will be attending a meeting with my colleagues across the county later this week, and will then debrief with our administrative team and the board on any additional updates regarding this new order. But we'll work together to communicate any impacts on our end of year activities as soon as possible with families. But as this order is brand new, only a few hours old, we're going to take a few days to make sure that we digest it and review it fully before we communicate with families more broadly. As Dr. Taratuski already noted, this week is Staff Appreciation Week, and we're celebrating the week in a number of ways in our schools. Our parent organizations are providing lunches and snacks in our schools, and building and office administrators are celebrating in every building with various treats and prizes. Today, Emily Kerr announced the first of 4 days of giveaways to staff who win a drawing each day for an Apple Watch or a gift certificate to a local spa. And later this week, small tokens of appreciation from the school board and the administrative team will appear in all staff mailboxes. We have tremendous gratitude for all of our staff and their ongoing dedication and focus on our students and their families. We are also grateful to the STEA, who is treating administrators to breakfast this week as well. Tonight's Spartan Spotlight is our theater program at the high school led by Mrs. Marlene Thornton. Mrs. Thornton has been a teacher in Springfield since August of 1995, and she is unparalleled in her enthusiasm for our students, her creativity, and her dedication to excellence. She has prepared a fantastic video for you this evening, so I'll turn things over to Dr. Rittenhouse and Mrs. Thornton at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Yannicone, and good evening, everybody. I'd like to personally thank the school board, administrative team, staff, and our Springfield Township families and students for your support of and commitment to the arts at our wonderful high school. This evening, it is our pleasure to present a Spartan Spotlight from SCHS Thespian Troupe 1154, a year in review. This year in review showcases our talented students with a focus on the theory of relativity, our virtual spring show. I was honored to be invited to our auditorium for a cast viewing, my very first, thank you very much, of the show last Thursday and on opening night. Words cannot express how proud I was last week to be the principal, supporter, and friend of all the students and adults involved in the theory of relativity. Now, please welcome SCHS Theater, Filmmaking, Creative Writing Teacher, and Drama Director, Marlene Thornton, who will introduce our Spartan Spotlight. Marlene.
Thank you, Dr. Rittenhouse, and good evening. I would just like to say what an honor it is to be asked to present the Spartan Spotlight tonight. Thank you, Dr. Yannicone, Dr. Johnson, for that invitation. What you're about to see is a glimpse inside the thespian's year of production and activities. It's a joy to work with these wonderful kids every day. They are talented, they are driven, and it's just wonderful to see them every day when I come to school. Before I begin, I just have a couple of thank yous. I want to thank the parents who support us, and particularly this year because the support was a little different than usual. This time it was tearing their living rooms apart, which you'll understand in a few minutes. And they've just been wonderful and so supportive. I really want to thank our administrators at the high school, especially Dr. Rittenhouse and Mr. LaRocco. I think Mr. LaRocco came to my classroom just about every day to ask how it was going and how I was doing. I could count on it pretty much every day. I want to thank the amazing production team at the high school who are in this video, but in particular, I want to thank someone on our production team who really isn't in the video because she doesn't do the exciting part. She does the part that I'm so glad I don't have to do. Our producer, Ginny Wexler, who handles all the paperwork, the money, the food, and everything else that we need during this, during any production that we do. It really takes a village to make a musical. And so right now, I'd just like to, again, say thank you to everyone who supports us and enjoy our video that you're about to see.
Although certainly an unusual one, the 2020 to 2021 school year has been incredible for the Springfield Township High School's Troop 1154. Over the summer, a dozen members of the troop attended the International Thespian Virtual Festival and were inspired by the work we saw there. Not to mention our live chats with the likes of Tina Fey, Stephen Schwartz, and Dolly Parton. Lilia and Michaela also brought home superior medals from the Thespian Individual Event Competition. The Thespians hit the ground running in September with a show that had been planned for several years, Glimpses of Springfield 2020, a compilation of student-written scripts from our creative writing classes and other student playwrights. The process was intricate, using green screens and ring lights to give the illusion of students being in the same room when they were all in their own homes. We combined the scenes and monologues with choreography and artwork to create our traditional Glimpses of Springfield, a traditional performance we have produced for decades, just in the form of a film. The Thespians' next stop was at the Pennsylvania Thespian Conference, where we presented Glimpses of Springfield as a main stage production. We were critiqued by directors from around the state who were flabbergasted by the scope of the production and the number of students we were able to involve in the play, from playwrights to artists to dancers to editors. When we told the adjudicators the size of our school, they were blown away. It was a wonderful thing to hear in our live critique.
The Pennsylvania State Thespian Conference 2021 Overture this year was a success. 13 students and 3 teachers from our very own Thespian Troupe 1154 were able to attend the virtual conference. All participants had the opportunity to watch shows, attend workshops, talk to colleges, participate in PA playworks, and meet thespians from across the state. As an added bonus, attendees learned valuable lessons from special guests and celebrity speakers. STHS was awarded the title of Gold Honor Thespian Troupe for our extensive work in theater this year, and we were so excited to be able to take our show to the virtual conference stage.
Glimpses of Springfield 2020 received rave reviews from our responding critics, and senior Lilia Mitchell was named the all-star cast member of the show. Lilia, along with Michaela Mitchell and Simran Jain, were also awarded superior medals for their Thespi individual events and now qualify for internationals this summer. Other students took on leadership roles as senior Trey DeBose represented our troupe as a state thespian officer. He led discussions and was featured in several state videos. Simran Jain was elected as an STO for next year, and Shannon Cavanaugh and Roger Nelson were featured playwrights. Everyone put in a lot of hard work, and we had a great time.
The troupe then set their sights on the spring musical. After seeing a production of The Theory of Relativity at the International Festival, it became clear that the script was one we could go in any direction we needed. Since our choice had to be made in the fall, this script seemed to be the perfect solution to all of the questions the year brought to us. As the community health challenges continued to be a question in December and early January, the majority of our students voiced that they would feel more confident producing from their homes. The directors and many students also liked the idea of seeing actors' faces after watching several other schools act with masks on at their festival. The teachers liked the idea of building our students' knowledge of screen acting as well. Production began. We moved forward learning the music and the lines and created a final production of The Theory of Relativity that we are extremely proud of.
But it is the process of this musical that was the most challenging, time-consuming, fascinating, and downright hard that makes this year's thespian story interesting. Marlene has been referring to this musical as a pineapple upside down cake since the start. Instead of the orchestra coming in at the end of the production, which is the norm, orchestration had to be recorded first in order to get the timing ready for the actors. And so the musicians came in and rehearsed and recorded in the early winter. From there, orchestra director Chuck Gottesman mixed the music, created the final timeline in each musical number, and sent it on to our new musical director, Nick Van Meter. Based on student personal preference, Nick rehearsed with the students individually, either at home or in school, for hours and hours, and then spent more hours recording their final vocal recordings. With sound recording kits that were distributed to students who wanted to record at home and a safe recording studio at school, over 1,000 audio clips were obtained and mixed with vocal and diction aligning. At that point, the students' recordings were sent back to the students for them to act and dance synchronized to that recording. Meanwhile, Marlene Thornton, Jelly Visozzi, and Nick Picknally were busy teaching all of what you see on the screen. With pre-recorded instructional tapes and live Zoom choreography rehearsals with Nick in New York City, the choreography was taught and rehearsed. Jelly and Marlene were busy having Zoom blocking and actor coaching rehearsals with all of the soloists and actors. Once the students recorded with our vocal director, Marlene and Jelly were given the rough cuts, which had accurate timing for the students to rehearse, and ultimately record their visuals while singing along with themselves. No lip syncing. That looked too fake and made syncing the audio too difficult.
The rough vocal cuts were then sent out to our audio engineer for a final professionally mastered score, while all of the physicality was being recorded. Our student actors then safely passed around boxes with ring lights, black backdrops, wooden flooring if needed, and painted chairs to record along with their pre-recorded sound recordings. Once the 28 cast members achieved that goal, the 10 student and adult editors began their process of editing all of the numbers together.
After that was completed, our set design artists, prosceniums, were added as the frame around each of the scenes led by Mark Kobas. A final timeline of the entire show was created by Dan Meter.
Last but not least, our professionally mixed sound was added to the production. Credits and titles were added, and on Thursday, April 29th, The Theory of Relativity was streamed through the publishing company for our virtual audience. It was a monumental task that the Thespians tackled and achieved.
The Thespians will end this year with our Thespian initiation later in the spring, and then we will attend this year's virtual international festival, where we will attend virtual shows, countless workshops, discussions, and social events. 3 students, including myself, Lilia, and Michaela, will again compete in the Thespi event. It has been quite the year, but one the Thespians are very proud of. The skills that we've learned this year were certainly different than the norm, but acting for TV and film, editing, reinventing, and having to think outside of the box are skills that our students will take forward in their lives and their careers. We will never forget this school year.
This show surprised me in so many ways. I didn't think we'd be able to pull it off just because we've never done something like this before. Amazing.
Just being in this show has given me a way to let it out.
This show has been a creative escape for me.
Kind of seeing everybody get put together in one place and watch it all just blossom in the end.
I was able to be a part of the family still.
And how much our teachers cared about putting this together.
And it brought me joy overall because I made friends with one of my directors, Jelly, and it was just so much fun.
Growing so much as an actor and as a vocalist. It was just a really great place for me to be.
I realized that no matter what, if we're on Zoom, if we're on stage, the cast is 100% dedicated.
And I could still wake up every morning and know that I had a Thespian meeting, and that kept me going. And it made it fun to come to school, it made it fun to go on Zoom, which I was having a very hard time with at the beginning of the year. It meant keeping singing and acting so that I didn't lose my voice.
This year I got some new opportunities. I was able to choreograph, which was brand new for me. And then to see my peers do it was even more fun.
So a lot of the memorization is on you, and you can't look around at other people to remember all of the choreography.
Being a thespian has meant a lot to me, especially this year. I'm just so proud of the work that we've done, and I'm so grateful that I did it this year.
It was amazing to do something and remember my senior year as something to look back on, even during this pandemic. So I love this thespian troupe, and I'm so proud to be a part of it.
Such a good thing to be involved in.
And then just to see it on the screen was magnificent. It felt like a stage.
And I'm definitely gonna miss theater, and this was a great way to go out.
I'm just extremely grateful, and I just love this group of people, and I'm going to miss all the seniors, so I can't wait to do it all again next year.
So thank you again for giving us this opportunity.
Mrs. Thornton, I can't thank you enough for, and I have to say to the members of the school board, we asked Mrs. Thornton to put together this video after she finished the production, which was, as you can see, an accomplishment of unbelievable proportions. And while she had a really great team with her, she is the leader of that team, and she's done a phenomenal job bringing the students together. We were speaking just before the board meeting about the fact that last Thursday night was the first time in the high school for some of the members of the cast and some of the people who came to watch the show. They had not been in the high school since March of 2020. And they came in order to see the show and support the theater program. So I just want to thank her personally. I also want to say, if you haven't had a chance to see the show, and I hope this is okay, Mrs. Thornton, we can still get to see the video.
We don't own the rights to the video, but we can see what we can do.
That'd be great, because I think there might be some people who after tonight will want to see it, especially that last number. And if you're unfamiliar with the show, I think choosing it was such a great move on the part of the students and on Mrs. Thornton's decision-making, because the whole theme of the show is how we're all interconnected. And I think in a year that we really struggled with that concept and how to stay connected, I just think it was the perfect choice. And I just want to say thank you again. It was phenomenal.
Thank you.
Okay, so now I feel like I've set Ms. Michaels and I up for the worst, downfall, because we're going to go from this uplifting spotlight to the budget presentation. But here we go. All right, so I'm going to share my screen, and this will be the last thing in our administrative report. Okay. Can you all see the screen? Okay. So our budget presentation is the proposed final budget. And I'm just going to begin by talking a little bit about the process. So where are we in our planning and what remains to be decided by the board? So we had the preliminary budget presentation, which was approved at the December 1st, 2020 interim board meeting. And at that time, Dr. Hacker and Mr. King presented a 6.16 proposed increase in taxes. They proposed using just over 2.5 million of our fund balance. And they anticipated that we would have about just under 64 million in expenses. And obviously that is very early in the budget process, and it's expected that those numbers would change by this time. Tonight, 2 weeks ago, we proposed the final budget at our finance committee meeting, and Mr. Bedard shared, or Mr. DeFranco, I apologize, shared a summary of our finance committee meeting. Tonight, we have brought a presentation that includes some options for the board to consider. Currently, we have the proposed increase at 2.5%. We have about 2.3 in fund balance allocation, and we're estimating about 62.7 million in expenses. We will have a finance committee meeting the beginning of the next month on June 3rd. And at that time, the board can continue to consider whether to maintain the proposed final budget levels or to modify it in any way that you deem appropriate. As has already been mentioned by Mr. DeFranco, we have an index of 3%. And so we wouldn't want to go over that 3%, but we are able through the state to go up to 3%. And then we have planned on our agenda for June 15th that we would have the final budget for your approval at whatever level you decide by that date is appropriate. And then we would move forward, obviously, with implementing that budget starting July 1. Our guiding principle through this budget process has been our school mission, our district mission to educate and develop all students as learners and citizens who are high achieving, resilient, and responsible in a changing global community. We recognize that it is extremely important for us to balance a strong education program with fiscal responsibility to the community. And we realize this has been a very difficult year. These were our primary goals as we worked together as an administrative team to develop the budget. So we want to maintain strong academic programming that meets the needs of all of our learners. We want to continue to provide social, emotional resources and supports. We will provide opportunities for enrichment in academic programming and through our extracurricular activities. We would like to continue to develop our campus and facilities as representative of a strong, vibrant learning community. Our technology resources, we want to continue to upgrade and purchase for instruction, student learning, and our infrastructure. And finally, we'd like to continue our professional learning opportunities for all of our staff. With regard to growth and development this year, we wanted to take a look at what has our community gained as a result of this year's budget. The completion of the Enfield Elementary School is one item that we thought was very important, and certainly it's a beautiful building, and we'll be having our ribbon cutting later this month. The completion of the high school athletic facilities, our digital studio, and our interior classrooms at the high school. We added a one-to-one iPad integration in K-2 at Enfield School this year. We added an online registration portal. We've maintained the health and safety of our staff and students throughout the pandemic. And our academic achievement results thus far are consistent with neighboring districts, as is evidenced by our presentation last month by Dr. Johnston with regard to student achievement 2B. I'm going to turn things over to Ms. Michaels, who's going to talk a little bit about some of the financial aspects of our budget preparation.
Thank you, Dr. Yannicone. The next two slides will provide a visual representation of where our funding comes from and how our budget is allocated to reflect those guiding principles Dr. Yannicone just spoke of. So on this slide, you see that our three major categories of revenue is derived from local, state, and federal resources. As you will note in that large shaded blue area, that our local resources make up about 79% of our overall funding. Of that local amount, 97% of those funds are derived from current real estate taxes, as well as earned income taxes. State and federal funding makes up about 21% of our overall revenue budget. Those two funding sources have relatively remained stagnant over the years. Over the next 2 years, you will see an increase in federal funding due to the ESSR, and that's non-recurring federal funds. So we can move forward to the next slide, Dr. Yannicone. And this representation shows how our funding is allocated. So you will see that the two blue shaded areas represent about 84% of where our funding is allocated in our budget. This is direct instruction and related services, which directly impact our students. While debt service is the third highest ranking area in that pie slice, that impacts students based upon, as Dr. Yannicone mentioned, the completion of the Enfield building, the high school projects and athletic fields, and just how it serves the community as well as our students with those building projects. The next slide, I'll briefly review the impact that the pandemic has had on our district's budget. So you will see that our tax collection rate decreased slightly, about 1.5%, which impacts us at about less than $600,000 in real estate taxes. Our delinquency collection rate decreased, while our number of delinquency accounts increased. Our earned income tax collection rates were not inversely impacted as originally anticipated, and our overall revenue slightly increased as a result of residents working at home instead of in Philadelphia. The biggest impact was our earning on investments, which significantly decreased as a result of the current economy and our low interest rates. Our other local revenue, which includes facility use, gate admissions, and other fees, decreased due to gathering and activity restrictions. And we had unexpected expense due to our expanded food service to the community.
I'm going to speak just a little bit about the educational impact of the pandemic. As we've discussed previously, some students are going to require compensatory educational services, including academic and social emotional support as we move forward. Some students will require assistance in developing skills to be successful in the next grade, and some students will require credit recovery in order to meet their on-time graduation requirements. In addition, a secondary educational impact of the pandemic is our cyber charter school tuition. In many school districts in the regions, charter school enrollment increased during the pandemic. And I want to make sure that I share with you where we are currently. So the tuition currently for cyber charter school tuition is $15,241 if a student is a general education student. If the student is a special education student, the tuition is $34,891 for the year. For this school year, we have 37 students enrolled in cyber charter schools. And so our anticipated cost for this school year, we haven't had all of the final bills yet, they'll come in the next month or so. The anticipated costs are about $567,467. We decided to survey all of our virtual families because we wanted to see what we could do to plan for hopefully the return of the overwhelming majority of our students who are in virtual education, in the hopes that we will not lose them to cyber charters, which costs further to the district taxpayers. So these are the survey results as of this morning. We've surveyed all of our families, K through 12, who currently have children enrolled in the virtual program rather than attending in person 4 days. Currently, about 65% of those families have notified us they intend to return their children to in-person learning in September. And that's good news. There are about 26% who are undecided at this time. And the factors that they note that are part of their decision-making process are whether or not their children will be able to be vaccinated by September, whether or not transmission rates will drop in the county and in the township prior to the start of the new school year, and the extent to which they personally feel safe in the community returning to work and having their children return to school. We do have 8.8% of those families who've returned the survey who indicate that they intend to keep their children learning virtually from home in September. And we do anticipate that PDE will allow this as an option going into the new school year. And so we are planning as an administrative team for how we might offer virtual schooling in district to avoid losing families to other programs next year. In addition to that, I wanted to talk a little bit about the ESSR grant funding and how we've used those funds. The ESSR is the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. It's a federal grant program that's been provided this year in order to help mitigate the cost of the pandemic. There have been 3 rounds of relief. The first round, ESSR 1, here are the things we use that money towards. We had some technology acquisitions for additional laptops and iPads in order to make sure that every student this year had a working device that they could work from home, whether we were fully virtual or in hybrid. In addition, we had some wireless connectivity in the neighborhoods, as well as in our own buildings. We wanted to make sure that we upgraded so that our wireless speed would be adequate for all of the children and families who would be online. We purchased docking stations, which provided 360 surround sound so that the children at home could hear the children in the classroom and vice versa. Those docking stations didn't arrive until January, but they have been instrumental in providing connection in our classrooms K through 12 this second semester. And finally, under technology, we had to purchase some infrastructure and cybersecurity in order to mitigate some of the concerns that have existed around things like Zoom bombing. We did purchase a great deal of protective equipment, plexiglass for our classrooms and offices, hygiene and sanitation, many items that were necessary in order to maintain health and safety. We also purchased additional desks, tables, and chairs to maintain the required 6 feet of social distancing. The tents outside the middle school and Erdenheim have been rented for the spring to maintain the necessary social distancing for lunches. And we had a moving cost because we moved furniture last summer to the Church Road site and then moved it back over spring break in order to make sure that all the children had desks and chairs for school in April. And then finally, we had additional staffing costs, many instructional aides in order to cover student supervision, and substitute teachers to cover teachers who were not well enough or who had doctors' recommendations to remain at home during the pandemic. As we look forward to ESSR 2 and 3, the second and third rounds of the Elementary and Secondary Safety and Recovery Act, it's important for us to keep in mind we're currently using ESSR 2 dollars. We have not yet spent ESSR 3 dollars, but we do anticipate that we're going to need to use them in these areas. So our Spartan Academies this summer, for all of our students, we have about 300 families who've requested attendance at our 3 to 4 weeks of summer learning. All the costs associated with those academies, materials, staffing, running the buildings, cleaning the buildings, et cetera, all of that will come out of these grant funds. Compensatory education for the next 2 years through 2024 will come out of these funds. Any virtual academy options that we offer to families who may not feel ready yet in September to return to school will come out of these funds. Additional mental health resources for children who need them. Health and safety resources, additional PPE, for example, will come out of these funds. We are currently in the process of preparing a recommendation for you on new teacher and student devices. Our teacher and student devices were scheduled to be replaced last summer, and we delayed that purchase. It's a lease purchase, but we delayed that purchase as a result of the pandemic. We're going to need to move forward. At this time, they're well beyond their use. And we are continuing to look at cybersecurity, which is a concern in every school district. And finally, obviously cleaning and sanitizing as we move forward. COVID is not disappearing. We do anticipate and have been asked by the Office of Public Health to anticipate some increase in transmission rates going into next winter as we experienced this past winter. I'll turn it back over to Ms. Michaels.
Thank you. This is just a recap of what Dr. Yannicone presented at the beginning during the budget process. This was a look back at the preliminary budget, which was discussed at the November Finance Committee and approved at the December 1st interim meeting. So the preliminary budget had a 6.16% recommended tax increase with anticipated expenditures of $63.9 million and anticipated revenue of $61.4 million, which would require the difference or the use or supplemented from fund balance of $2.5 million. In between that time period, the administrative team reviewed and implemented some cost saving strategies, which will continue into this upcoming fiscal year. Some of those things were attritional savings and analysis planning with technology, weighing lease versus purchase options, the copier renewal, printer evaluation, also alignment of the new grant funding with existing and additional expenditures, as well as debt service refunding opportunities. Which leads us to where we are this evening, which is the proposed final budget that includes a 2.5% tax increase with anticipated expenditures of $62.7 million with anticipated revenue of $60.3 million, which would require a fund balance usage of about $2.3 million. This slide provides a 7-year look back at the Act 1 index versus where Springfield increased taxes. So I always think that this is a good slide just to do a comparison. The bold shows where we are in 21-22. We are in the proposed final stage, not the final stage. So right now that's a 2.5% tax increase with the Act 1 index at 3%. The homeowner impact of a 2.5% property tax increase, we always benchmark it on the median assessed home value, which in Springfield Township is $151,910. That monthly tax increase for a 2.5% increase would be $10.90 per month. an annual additional tax increase of $130.84. Just as early as this morning, we received our final piece of the Homestead farmstead exclusion. This is the property tax rebate that comes from the state that's passed down through school district for approved homestead farmstead properties within our district. That calculation comes out that against the total tax bill, there will be a credit of $353.45 for those approved farmstead homestead properties. And just the impact on fund balance, we have talked about this. Our current estimated fund balance as of July 1, 2021 is $24.2 million with a 2.5% proposed final budget anticipated use. That would be a decrease of about $2.3 million, which would leave us an estimated remaining fund balance at June 30th of 2022 of $21.9 million. And just as a tax increase comparison or options of 2%, 2.25%, and 2.5%, it shows the additional revenue that would be garnered from those prospective increases. It ranges from about $867,000 in new tax revenue to slightly over $1 million. Same thing on the impact of fund balance. The impact would be about a little bit over 2.5 in both scenarios of 2 and 2.25, and then 2.5 would be $2.3 million. You'll see that the range for the impact on the medium homeowner for the monthly is $8.72 and annual at $104.67 to $10.90 per month and annually at $130.84. So this last slide, before I turn it back over to Dr. Yannicone, is what I call the good and the bad of using fund balance. So what I'd like to do is just to briefly go over some positive short-term and long-term impacts of having a strong fund balance, and then briefly talk about some negative short-term and long-term impacts of usage of fund balance. So you'll see short-term positive impact is a strength indicator of cash flow. So having a strong fund balance provides us with the ability to sustain negative economic or funding situations, such as the pandemic we're in, without the need for short-term borrowing. It mitigates local tax increases on the short-term level. And then on the long-term impact, strong fund balance is a key indicator or key factor in determining bond rating. Currently, Springfield has a AA+ bond rating with S&P, which is the second highest rating you can have. You'll see with the first bullet there that it goes BBB-, which is the lowest, all the way to AAA, which is the highest. And that's an indicator of financial health. Again, we are a AA+, which is the second highest. The stronger the rating, the better the interest rate and yield when you're going out for bonds and refinancing. On the negative short-term and long-term impact of usage of fund balance is obviously sustainability. You continuously use fund balance to offset the budget. It will decrease fund balance over time. The other impacts and long-term impacts is if you shift all those positives that are in the left-hand side of the column, you will now start to shift those slowly over to the negative side. Whereas fund balance goes down, your strength of cash flow goes down. Obviously, mitigating local tax increases would not be possible. And then our rating, that would come into question as our fund balance started to decrease.
So just want to close here by just reminding you, this is where we're headed. These are our guiding principles as an administrative team. I'm not going to repeat them, but just wanted to reiterate that we do believe that we are able to maintain a very strong academic program for the community's students, as well as provide really terrific resources in our campuses for our community groups as well. And at this time, you know, where we are in the motion this evening is to continue the process of determining that final budget on June 15th. So tonight's proposal, we're sitting right now at 2.5%. We are very comfortable moving up and down between 2.5 and 2%. As you saw on the comparison slide that Ms. Michaels provided for you, that was a request of the Finance Committee that we shared options with you and pros and cons of use of fund balance relative to various rates of tax increase. At our Finance Committee meeting on June 3rd, we can continue to have those conversations. We do not have to make a final decision on fund balance versus a tax increase until June 15th. That actually should say June and not July, I apologize. And so for a July 1 budget, we're happy to answer any questions you have and hope that this will be helpful to you all in making decisions about where you'd like us to head with the budget next. I am going to stop my share.
Thank you, Dr. Yannicone and Ms. Michaels. That's a very comprehensive presentation. It's a lot of information to take in. I want to actually put it out to the board members. I know that there were members of the Finance Committee who were present at the discussion, and so wanted to see if there were any questions for Dr. Yannicone or Ms. Michaels at this time.
I'd love to start by just thanking Ms. Michaels and Dr. Yannicone for an awesome review of a very detailed budget and a very comprehensive and thoughtful approach to both our academic needs, our facility needs, our long-term needs. So it's a really well done budget. And before I say any other comments or questions, I also want to call out Ms. Thornton and the thespian troupe. That was an incredible presentation. Loved it. And it's one of the reasons why we need to continue to invest in our schools, because we have children, young adults that are truly leaders in our community, and the investments in the school are critically important. One of the key questions I have, because it's important that we discuss use of fund balance to offset the necessary investments in this year's budget. So one of the key questions that I have is, when you think about the year that we've been through, there have been pretty significant one-time costs, which we can, have a little bit more confidence that we'll have a one-time or ongoing cost in the 2021-2022 school year, increased cleaning, right? The challenges that would come with the pandemic and dealing with the pandemic. I'd love to know how much of those like one-time or short-term expenses associated with the pandemic are fully covered by the ESSR funds coming from the relief funds from the federal government, and how much is if that's 100% covered, and the rest of the discussion around how do we cover our ongoing or long-term investments in teachers and facilities. I want to kind of separate those two things so that I would be super supportive of using more fund balance for one-time or short-term impacts, but I get really concerned about dipping into the fund balance for what becomes our new operating long-term expenses. Because what I don't want to happen is a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, we say, we can't tap into the fund balance because it's been depleted. And now we need a big jump in taxes, which no one wants, right? So I'll conclude by saying, great job coming in way under the index fund recommended by the state of 3%. And specifically want to know how much of our short-term one-time expenses are covered by the federal ESSR funds, right? Does that make sense? It was a long-winded statement, congratulatory statement, and question.
Thank you for the congratulations. We appreciate the support. And Ms. Michaels, I'm going to let you confirm what I think I know the answer to be, but if you want to confirm that, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, so the expenses that you're speaking of that got covered by the ESSR funding, the grant funding, a lot of those items were covered because they were one-time, unanticipated. There were other unanticipated costs that were not covered by the ESSR funds. And as of right now, ESSR 1 is the one that's been fully utilized. As we move into ESSR 2 and ESSR 3, the focus is turning away from PP&E and other things that are unexpected due to the actual COVID related expenses, and moving more towards targeted learning and summer programming, and making sure that because of students being in a virtual environment and not the norm of our educational program, that we are making sure that those funds are going towards programming that addresses that. So we have to be mindful in creating the budget because we have X amount of years to use those ESSR grant fundings. And right now, there are still some unknowns with the pandemic. The pandemic's not over. Dr. Yannicone gave a great update on where numbers are. But what we don't know is what we don't know. We still have to provide PP&E, obviously. We won't know until we get after summer or into the school year on where we are with social distancing, masks. The trajectory looks good right now that we're getting better, but that could change. So some of those PP&E items, some of the things that we've put into place, such as the cleaning, the hand sanitizer, things that I don't think in the short term will go away, or one-time costs that we will have to absorb into our budget. Other things that operationally has been absorbed into the budget as it was in the past year under Mr. King's guidance has been some of the debt service costs, some of the earmarking for transportation costs to make sure that we're maintaining our bus fleet and looking into the future for that. So my philosophy and Mr. King's philosophy were very similar, is that any fund balance use will be used for one time. We don't want to get caught into the situation where it's reoccurring expenditures. Obviously, as we go into this school year, into this next budget year, Dr. Yannicone relayed this at the Finance Committee meeting, that our goal is not to touch fund balance. We want to come in under budget. So that is a high priority for myself and as well as Dr. Yannicone. We are very intentional when it comes to the reoccurring costs to make sure that those are addressed and they're able to be absorbed within our budget so that it doesn't adversely affect or impact fund balance. So I hope I answered that question.
I appreciate your answer, Kara. I want to add a piece that is a real unknown to us and a little bit more unsettling. And that is, we don't yet know the long-term educational impact of the pandemic. So we don't know for an 8-year-old who's been in virtual schooling for 16 months, the extent to which they are going to need ongoing services beyond 2024, which is when ESSR 3 dead ends. We don't know what the long-term mental health consequences of the pandemic are. And so there are a lot of unknowns for us. We don't know that that 8.8% of families have indicated they will not return in person in September. We will hope to be able to provide a virtual schooling option within the district that will meet their children's needs. But if they choose cyber charter, as we all know, charter schools are not free to the district. There is an expense. And so there are some real unknowns for us, and we're very early in coming out of the pandemic. So Ms. Michaels and I are really trying to err on the side of caution and be thoughtful about the fact that our costs could increase in some of those educational areas.
I have a question with regard to the amount of fund balance that's considered. You spoke, Ms. Michaels, to a healthy fund balance, and I'm just wondering what is recommended or what you look at in terms of percentage of money, amount of money that is considered sort of a healthy fund balance that we should have.
So one of the informational pieces that we provided at the Finance Committee meeting did provide this information to show where our fund balance was even after anticipated use of the upcoming budget year, and benchmark that against our overall expenditure budget. So it would take the remaining balance of fund balance and benchmark that against where our operational expenditures were. And we were at 35%. I consider that a very strong and healthy fund balance. And that is even after, if we did use the entire earmarked amount that we had anticipated with this upcoming budget, that's the percentage even after that. There's designations of fund balance, which I think you're all aware of. And the state allows for an 8% for unassigned, which basically provides for the unexpected. That is the max that you can go based upon our budget. And then in other areas, you can assign them for things like capital projects, for tax assessments, if that were to happen with the tax assessment decreases. So there's a multiple of things that you can assign the overall fund balance to, but 8% is the legal limit for unassigned. And again, we're at about a 35% when you benchmark that against our overall operating expenditure. But I would consider that a healthy fund balance.
Is there a point at which that becomes more concerning, going down the percentage?
I think if there is I think if you start to benchmark and you start to see a decline and just a continual decline, then I think that's when questions are raised on why, because I think it then speaks to what Mr. Bedard brought up, that it's no longer used for one-time operational expenses. You are now getting into the recurring piece, so that you're really operating in an ongoing deficit. So I think it's more so than a percentage on what is the norm or what's healthy or not healthy. I think that differs. I don't think that there is a one size fits all, because districts are very different and their needs are different. But I would say progressively, if you see a declining fund balance year after year, then you would start to have that question. But as of right now, even a 30 to 25% fund balance, when you're benchmarking that against what your operating costs are, that's still a considerably healthy fund balance.
Okay. And so just to kind of be clear in terms of the options, the difference between the options is the percentage of fund balance that we would be using to offset the tax versus any adjustments within that budget, the bottom line, so to speak.
That is correct. So one thing that I will mention is from the preliminary budget to the proposed final budget, administration worked really hard to review budgets and to cut as much as possible without impacting programming. And we were able to cut about $1.2 million from the preliminary expenditure number to where we're proposing right now. So at this point, I think $1.2 million is a pretty good give for administration on cutting. And at this point, yes, it would be the difference of the tax increase would be the amount of fund balance that would be used to offset in balancing the budget.
And I'm sorry for all the questions. I just wanted to, you had presented some information about what the actual cost, say, per month or per year would be in those increases per household. And I'm wondering if there's information about last year's tax increase and what the sort of the actuals were, the dollar figures would be in terms of the monthly increase at that point and yearly increase. Was I clear on that? I'm sorry.
You're asking what that same information was for last fiscal year. I do have that. It'll take me a minute to pull that for you.
Okay.
You can ask another.
Okay.
I can get that information.
Okay, that's fine. Are there any other questions at this point or comments? I mean, I certainly feel like this is an important discussion.
Can I ask just one? And at the risk of, I'm not necessarily trying to spend other people's money, but Ms. Michaels and Dr. Yannicone, I saw on the chart, obviously, and it was really helpful. There was a breakdown of between 2% and 2.5% increase is what would it look like if, say, we went to, in the interest of maintaining fund balance and keeping a healthy perspective and trying to plan on what might happen. I don't think any of us anticipated the last year. What does like 2.6 or 2.7% look like? I'm not necessarily advocating that. I'm just curious what that looks like if we're taxes are confiscatory. I get that, but they're also a really, really good investment, right? Somebody said that's how we pay for civilization. So if we're talking,
Oh, we just lost you, Mr. Needleman. You went to mute.
sorry, I can't tell you how many people want to do that. So I'm just curious if there's been any breakdown of what it looks like, say, to go from 2.5 to 2.6% in terms of in terms of all of it.
I'm gonna share my screen again for that comparison slide. We did not go above 2.5%. It was our understanding that the board wanted to maintain a healthy gap between the index and the increase. However, if you take a look at this slide, and I'll share it now, and you look at the movement from 2 to 2.25 to 2.5, you can see it's roughly $1, right, monthly, and then that compounds obviously annually, and so you could project out where you would be at 2.75. Right, because it's every quarter point is getting you about $1.
It would be that much more. Okay, fair enough.
Absolutely, and we're happy to share this entire presentation with you if you want to, dig into it over the next month before that meeting on June 3rd and the vote on June 15th.
Thank you. That'd be really helpful. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Sorry to mean to cut you off.
But
Yeah, not at all, not at all.
It's actually mathematically there. It's about $4.36 for every 1% per month, right? Or $4.36 times 12 is $52 per the median household on an annualized impact for every 1%. So if you went from 2.5 to 2.6, you're going to add another $52 per household in tax burden.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Or said differently, you would deplete the fund balance by that equivalent amount per household.
And I do have to apologize to Dr. Taratusky. I do not have that information at the tip of my fingertips, but I will most definitely get that information for you and share that with Dr. Yannicone to make sure that is shared.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks. Are there any other questions at this point on the presentation for Dr. Yannicone or Ms. Michaels from any of the other board members?
I do have a question. So I think it would be helpful. Obviously, we are living in unprecedented times, but historically, it would be interesting just to kind of have some perspective of where and when we have as a district. I liked the reflection of the past 7 years in terms of the tax increase, but also if we could go back that same 7 years and see where we have used the fund balance, where we haven't used the fund balance. Has it always been for, those one-time, the buses, that sort of thing, for the capital projects? I'm assuming that is the case. So, and in this instance, this is also kind of a one-time instance. So I'm just trying to kind of look kind of historically and just understand our use. And I think it also would be helpful for the newer board members that, haven't been on the board forever, just to understand that as well.
We can certainly do that. We can provide that to you. Thanks, Ms. Michaels.
May
making a note of that.
May I add some interesting thing? Well, no, this is in response to Kat's question, because I've been on the finance committee for God knows how long. I think every year, at least for the past 5 or 6 years, there was a portion of fund balance that was allocated to cover the shortfall, because I don't think that the caps that we were permitted, even though we try to stay below it, even if we went to the full cap, we could not cover what the needs were. I think our district, and I'm sure this is going to continue, has been frugal enough and very smart with its money to where we end up with a slight surplus that would either reduce the amount of fund balance we use or eliminate the need for fund balance overall. But I think at least in the budgets in the past half decade, we've allocated some fund balance to cover that gap.
But also, Walter, we've also been able to replenish that over time as well. So to Kat's point, seeing kind of that historical up and down, I think would be very helpful.
Yeah, but that's only to the magical stylings of Mr. King.
I think you're going to find Miss Michaels every bit as magical.
If not better, as I made the point of saying back a few days ago.
You did.
And she can be the magical Miss Michaels. So, I mean, that just.
As I said, she put Mr. King to shame the other day, and then I still stand by that.
Thank you, Mr. Lapidus. Ms. Michaels did mention earlier, and I want to just reiterate, it is our intention to be very, very careful over the next year and do our very best not to dip into fund balance. That's our goal, to come under budget.
Okay.
I would just kind of close with a comment where I started with a question, which is, my perspective is we need to be very, very careful about using fund balance for what could be anticipated long-term impacts. And Dr. Anacone, you made the point, we don't know yet what the 3, 5, 10-year impact of the challenge of this pandemic will be. What we do know, what is factual, is over the last decade in our school district, we've seen an increase in the number of students. We have seen an increase in the number of special needs students. We've seen an increase in the needs for increased attention to students in areas of special education across demographics, right? And this pandemic is not going to make any of those things that we've seen factually, objectively happen over the last 10 years any easier over the next 5 years. And so I just want to be relatively conservative of how we think about use of the fund balance, because this isn't a one-time short-term impact, or at least we can't make that conclusion today. And so I want to be very conservative with how we use the fund balance from my perspective.
Any other comments or questions?
So what is the process, Dr. Yannicone, the next steps that you're looking for us as a board to, I would, very much appreciate getting the, your presentation, but what are you looking for us in terms of the next steps? The next steps will be the next finance committee and then the full board. So are you looking for us then on that June 15th, or are you looking for some interim kind of discussion? Or what are you looking for from us? That's the iterative process here.
Sure, thank you. So tonight, our hope is that you will approve the proposed final, and then it must be posted for 30 days and made available to the public for their review and feedback and input. In the midst of those 30 days, we'll hold a public finance committee meeting. And again, we'll take feedback and input. And then ultimately, by the end of that finance committee meeting, our hope would be that the committee would have a final recommendation for us for where they'd like those numbers to land. And we'll bring that to the board on the 15th for a final vote. Did I miss anything, Ms. Michaels? Okay.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you both for that presentation. And we appreciate all the work that went into that, all of the work with the administrators to pare down the initial proposed budget, and it is on the agenda this evening. So there will be opportunity for further questions from the board or discussion once we make that motion, if anything is lingering. Okay. All right. That was an amazing administrative report. There were highs, there were lows, but it was all good. So let's move on to new business. Personnel. The Board of School Directors approves the following personnel as presented in the attachment: confidential personnel, certificated personnel, support personnel, extended school year program personnel, and Spartan Academy program personnel. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? Ms. Michaels?
Mr. Bedard,
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco,
Aye.
Mr. Lapidus,
Aye.
Mr. Needleman,
Aye.
Ms. Sarsfield,
Aye.
Ms. Lipinski,
Aye.
Dr. Taratusky.
Aye. Number 2, reappointment of board secretary. The Board of School Directors approves the re-election of Ms. Kara A. Michaels as the school board secretary for a further term ending July 1, 2025. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions?
I'd like to hear Ms. Michaels' speech.
I have none.
Okay. All right. Ms. Michaels?
Mr. Bedard,
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco,
Aye.
Mr. Lapidus,
Aye.
Mr. Needleman,
Aye.
Ms. Sarsfield,
Aye.
Ms. Lipinski,
Aye.
Dr. Taratusky.
Aye. Number 3, annual appointment. The Board of School Directors approves the annual appointment of Ms. Katie Braun as treasurer through June 30th, 2022. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? Okay. Ms. Michaels?
Mr. Bedard,
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco,
Aye.
Mr. Lapidus,
Aye.
Mr. Needleman,
Aye.
Ms. Sarsfield,
Aye.
Ms. Lipinski,
Aye.
Dr. Taratusky.
Aye. Number 4, focused staffing group. The Board of School Directors approves the contract with Focused Staffing Group LLC to provide nursing, behavioral, OT, PT, SLP, psychologist, and instructional assistant services for the district as needed at the hourly rates listed in the contract effective May 4th, 2021. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? I actually do have a question. Is this the only group that we are using for additional support services, or do we have contracts with other groups also? I'm just wondering what the need for, what prompted this new contract?
Sure, Ms. Kara, would you like to answer that?
Sure, we do have multiple other groups that we work, different contracted agencies that we work with. With the pandemic, staffing has been hard to find, not only hiring directly with the district, but also different contracting agencies are having a hard time finding staffing. So we're just trying to diversify the contract companies that we work with to find the staffing that we need anywhere that we can.
Understood. Any other comments or questions? Ms. Michaels?
Mr. Bedard,
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco,
Aye.
Mr. Lapidus,
Aye.
Mr. Needleman,
Aye.
Ms. Sarsfield,
Aye.
Ms. Lipinski,
Aye.
Dr. Taratusky.
Aye. Number 5, confidential supervisory personnel compensation plan. The Board of School Directors approves the School District of Springfield Township terms and conditions of employment for confidential supervisory personnel beginning July 1, 2021 through June 30th, 2024. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? Ms. Michaels?
Mr. Bedard,
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco,
Aye.
Mr. Lapidus,
Aye. Sorry, couldn't find the unmute button.
Mr. Needleman,
Aye.
Ms. Sarsfield,
Aye.
Ms. Lipinski,
Aye.
Dr. Taratusky.
Aye. Number 6, PSBA policy and review update. The Board of School Directors approves the Pennsylvania School Board Association's review and update of the Springfield Township School District's Board Policy Manual at a total cost of $6,800. Is there a motion
Motion.
and a second?
Second.
Second.
Any comments or questions? Okay, Ms. Michaels?
Mr. Bedard,
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco,
Aye.
Mr. Lapidus,
Aye.
Mr. Needleman,
Aye.
Ms. Sarsfield,
Aye.
Ms. Lipinski,
Aye.
Dr. Taratusky.
Aye. Number 7, high school math materials. The Board of School Directors, upon the recommendation of the Academic Affairs Committee, approves the purchase of high school mathematics materials, including Demana, Pre-Calculus, and Envision AGA, Algebra, Geometry, and Algebra 2, for a 6-year agreement of digital student and teacher resources for a total cost of $64,499.62. Is there a motion
Motion.
and a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? Okay, Ms. Michaels?
Mr. Bedard,
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco,
Aye.
Mr. Lapidus,
Aye.
Mr. Needleman,
Aye.
Ms. Sarsfield,
Aye.
Ms. Lipinski,
Aye.
Dr. Taratusky.
Aye. Number 8, middle school social studies materials. The Board of School Directors, upon the recommendation of the Academic Affairs Committee, approves the purchase of middle school social studies used in grades 6, 7, and 8 materials from Cengage Publishers for World History, Great Civilizations, for a 6-year agreement of digital student and teacher resources for a total cost of $75,153.93 as per the attached. Is there a motion
Motion.
and a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? Okay, Ms. Michaels?
Mr. Bedard,
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco,
Aye.
Mr. Lapidus,
Aye.
Mr. Needleman,
Aye.
Ms. Sarsfield,
Aye.
Ms. Lipinski,
Aye.
Dr. Taratusky.
Aye. Number 9, MCIU E-rate services. The Board of School Directors approves the E-rate application services agreement with the MCIU to complete the E-rate application process on behalf of the district, including all applicable forms for the 2022-2023 E-rate funding year cycle for a total fee of $6,360. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? Okay, Ms. Michaels?
Mr. Bedard,
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco,
Aye.
Mr. Lapidus,
Aye.
Mr. Needleman,
Aye.
Ms. Sarsfield,
Aye.
Ms. Lipinski,
Aye.
Dr. Taratusky.
Aye. Number 10, food service management contract. The Board of School Directors approves the renewal of the food service management contract with NutriServe Food Management, Inc. at the flat rate of $34,099.88 for the 2021-2022 school year. Is there a motion
Motion.
and a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? Okay, Ms. Michaels?
Mr. Bedard,
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco,
Aye.
Mr. Lapidus,
Aye.
Mr. Needleman,
Aye.
Ms. Sarsfield,
Aye.
Ms. Lipinski,
Aye.
Dr. Taratusky.
Aye. Number 11, acknowledgement of donation. The Board of School Directors accepts a donation in the amount of $500 from Tom and Ann Fair-Lieber to buy books for the Erdenheim Elementary School Library in memory of their son, James. Is there a motion
Motion.
and a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? I just want to express our thanks to Tom and Ann Fair for this donation. And I know that the students of our Erdenheim Elementary School will benefit from that. Thank you very much.
It is a beautiful gift.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, Ms. Michaels?
Mr. Bedard,
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco,
Aye.
Mr. Lapidus,
Aye.
Mr. Needleman,
Aye.
Ms. Sarsfield,
Aye.
Ms. Lipinski,
Aye.
Dr. Taratusky.
Aye. Number 12, adoption of the 2021-2022 proposed final budget. The Board of School Directors, as recommended by the Finance Committee, approves the following: the adoption of the 2021-2022 proposed final budget, approval of the advertisement and public inspection of the 2021-2022 final budget on Form PDE 2028, and the Homestead farmstead exclusion. Is there a motion
Motion.
and a second?
Second.
Are there any comments or questions? Okay, Ms. Michaels?
Mr. Bedard,
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco,
Aye.
Mr. Lapidus,
Aye.
Mr. Needleman,
Aye.
Ms. Sarsfield,
Aye.
Ms. Lipinski,
Aye.
Dr. Taratusky.
Aye. Number 13, microphone replacement. The Board of School Directors approves the purchase of a replacement microphone system to be used in the Freeze lobby at a total cost of $9,854.05. Is there a motion
Motion.
and a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions?
I guess we shouldn't just yell at each other.
It might work. It could work. Yeah. Then what would Tom and our other staff have to do?
Well, fair enough.
Ms. Michael?
Mr. Bedard,
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco,
Aye.
Mr. Lapidus,
Aye.
Mr. Needleman,
Aye.
Ms. Sarsfield,
Aye.
Ms. Lipinski,
Aye.
Dr. Taratusky.
Aye. Number 14, electronic LED message board. The Board of School Directors approves Clear Vision Signs LLC to perform work on all work associated with the installation of a new electronic LED message board at the main entrance to the high school in the amount of $21,600. Is there a motion
Motion.
and a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions?
I'm just curious, is the one that's there now not new?
It's not old, but it's not new. This is the LED board that we had installed with the construction project. It failed quickly.
And I noticed that the quotes have warranties with them. Does the one that it's replacing it? I apologize for asking obvious questions. I know you've already asked these yourselves.
It's no problem. Ms. Michaels, do you want to speak to that board? And Dr. Ritt, if you want to share what happened with the board, that'd be great.
Sure.
Okay, good. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. Just in regards to the first question about the warranties, from my understanding, this was discussed because it was on the summer project list that was presented to the property committee. This was discussed by Mr. Thorne that we were out of warranty. He did his due diligence as he normally does to ensure that we recoup any type of damage or anything with projects. So it was past the warranty, and my understanding is that the motherboard or the electronics piece of it failed. So we were out of the warranty with that, and we needed to get it replaced. But I will turn that over to Mr. Rittenhouse for additional.
So that description is right on target. I know Rich can maybe speak to the warranty piece, but the motherboard failed and it just stopped working. And it gets to the point that it can't be replaced. So, you know, that you can't fix it, so to speak. And certainly Rich can give more information, but it just stopped.
So this was a board that was installed actually prior to construction. So it's about 5 or 6 years old. And it was taken down during construction, put back up, was working. And like I said, there's the actual motherboard piece that comes from another country is unavailable to even replace it. I know Joe and Craig had worked on trying to get the actual piece component replaced, and it's just not in manufacturing anymore at this time. So it is I believe it is 5 or 6 years old, prior to construction, moved during construction, installed and was working, and since then is no longer working.
And it worked well before construction, taken down, stored, and just didn't work well. And obviously.
Fair enough. Thank you for the explanations.
Thank you all. Okay, any other comments or questions? All right, Ms. Michaels?
Mr. Bedard?
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco?
Aye.
Mr. Lapidus?
Aye.
Mr. Needleman?
Aye.
Ms. Sarsfield?
Aye.
Ms. Lipinski?
Aye.
Dr. Taratusky?
Aye. Number 15, school bus purchases. The Board of School Directors approves the following Sourcewell state contract for the purchase of two school buses from Bright Bill Body Works. Two 2022 84-passenger Bluebird All-American rear engine school buses for $267,208, and one 2022 48-passenger Bluebird Vision school bus for $98,603. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? Ms. Michaels?
Mr. Bedard?
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco?
Aye.
Mr. Lapidus?
Aye.
Mr. Needleman?
Aye.
Ms. Sarsfield?
Aye.
Ms. Lipinski?
Aye.
Dr. Taratusky?
Aye. Okay. All right, so that concludes our new business. And at this time, we will take public comments on non-agenda items. If you wish to speak this evening, if you could use the hand raise feature, and when you're called upon, if you could please let us know where you live in the township. Okay. All right. Mary Ellen Reed.
Good evening. I live in, can you hear me? I live in North Hills. And I want to just go back a little bit and just to the question, some clarifications. First of all, thank you all for your time. My question is around if Pennsylvania does not get to the 70% of vaccinated adults, will our children still be wearing masks in school, sports, and in indoor activities next year? Where does the board stand on this potential situation? Obviously, considering long-term wearing of mouth masks is difficult for our younger pupils. And as a follow-up also, will there be a requirement for younger students to be vaccinated to return to school full-time? Is there any consideration given to that?
Thanks so much, Ms. Reeves. I believe Dr. Yannicone did write in the question and answer, the Q&A, and indicated that we really don't know what the Office of Public Health will recommend for next year. At this point, we do consult with them and we do work with them on our health and safety plan. So that remains to be seen at this point. At this time, the only vaccine available is for our students 16 and up, but we do expect that, I believe, to expand to 12 and up within the next week or so. As with anyone, the district cannot require anyone to be vaccinated in order to participate in school. That is a personal health and safety choice. And so we will work with the Office of Public Health to continue any of that mitigation and, you know, make those decisions as they come.
Thank you for your fuller clarification on those topics. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Dr. Tarakowski, I want to also raise the New York Times just literally reported a few hours ago that Pfizer is now going to seek approval to get vaccinations for children between ages 2 and ages 12 by September. So that may be a game changer, obviously, for our elementary operations next year. So they're going to be seeking emergency approval shortly.
That's great. Thanks so much, Jeff, for that information.
Dr. Tarakowski, if I could add there, at my most recent meeting with the doctors from CHOP and the Montgomery County Office of Public Health, they estimated that any vaccine for children under 12 would be unlikely to be ready prior to the winter holidays, when they anticipate the possibility of an increase in transmission rates. And with regard, there was another question in the Q&A about mandates. Absent a mandate from the Pennsylvania Department of Health, we wouldn't be mandating the vaccine.
Right.
We've been led to believe that COVID will likely be handled the way whooping cough or pertussis is right now, moving forward. Perhaps not next year, but moving forward beyond that.
All right, thank you. All right, Jim Daly?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, we can. Thanks, Jim.
Hi, how are you? First, I want to thank everybody for their time and their service to the community. I know you guys work a lot of hours and very hard and make some difficult decisions, and I think the community appreciates it. But thank you for your service.
Jim, I know a lot of us know you, but I just would like you to just share where you live, just for the record here this evening.
I'm sorry, Jim
That's
Daly, Pen Oak Road.
Thanks.
Earlier, it was either I believe Ms. Michaels had indicated, maybe our superintendent, but the amount of funds for, I believe you said cyber virtual school was about $15,000 per student, and for the special needs children was about $34,000. Can you put that in context of what the average cost is for a day student at either the elementary school or the high school, what that cost per student is in relation to the budget?
Dr. Michaels, Dr. Yadicone or Ms. Michaels, do you have our per pupil cost available at this time?
I do not have it readily available, but
Okay.
I can most definitely follow up to answer that question.
Sure. Okay.
Great.
But,
Thank you so
yeah,
much.
Thanks, Jim. We'll make sure to get that information to you. Okay. Are there any other comments?
Valuable. I don't know if we can augment that presentation, but to actually add that in the presentation itself as a reference point, and that way it's available to everyone to review. I think that's a really good call out from Mr. Daly.
Great, thanks. Are there any other comments from the public for non-agenda items? Okay. Seeing that there are no other comments, I just want to thank everybody for their attendance this evening. There are a few future meeting dates that I want to make note of. We will have a regular board meeting On Monday evening, that's a change of the day due to Election Day the next day. It's Monday evening, May 17th, 2021 at 7 p.m. Board members will be in person as well as administrators, and there will be a certain number of community members that we will have in the audience at that point. And there will be an opportunity for the rest of the community who would like to attend virtually. There will be an interim board meeting on Tuesday, June 1st, 2021 at 7 p.m. That will also be a hybrid meeting. And board committee meetings, there will be a finance committee meeting on Thursday, June 3rd, 2021 at 8 a.m. That will be a virtual meeting. And that's it at this time. Thank you so much for coming. Thank all for their presentations and their input this evening, and have a good night. We're adjourned.